If Uluma had known that one small decision would open the door to the sweetest joy and the deepest trouble of her life, she would have thought twice before touching the princess's dress. In the kingdom of Inuimo, Uloma was the most trusted maid. People often wondered why the king and queen trusted her so deeply. She was not the oldest maid. She was not the most experienced. But she had a heart that shone like the morning sun over the hills of Inuimo. She was humble, hardworking, respectful, and kind to everyone. Whenever the royal family wanted to eat, Uloma was the one who tasted the food first. She checked everything to make sure the food was good and safe. She never complained. She never asked for anything. She simply served with joy. The king trusted her so much that anytime something important needed to be bought for the palace, Uloma must go with whoever was sent. Some people believed the king and queen saw her as one of their own children. Whenever she walked around the palace, even the guards greeted her with respect. The older maids loved her because although she was highly trusted, she never used her position to talk down on them. She listened to advice. She worked hard. She smiled easily. She prayed secretly every night for a better life. But deep inside her heart, Uloma had one dream that she never shared with anyone. She always wished she would one day become rich or get married to a prince and become a princess. Sometimes she sat outside the royal garden and imagined what life would be like if she had been born into royalty. The golden plates, the beautiful clothes, the perfume that smelled like heaven, the dances, the respect, the carriages, the soft beds. She would imagine it so deeply until her heart became heavy with longing. One bright morning, the queen asked Uloma to follow 2 palace guards to the nearby city to buy some items for the palace. Uloma dressed neatly in her usual simple gown and followed the guards. But that day, something unusual happened. Before they left the palace, Uloma walked into the princess's room. Hanging on the wooden stand was a beautiful peach-colored dress the princess had worn only once for a ceremony. The dress shone like something made for angels. Uloma touched it slowly. Her heart began to beat fast. She whispered to the palace guard, who was waiting at the door. "Can I wear this dress just for today? I want to feel like a princess, just once." The guard looked left and right, confused. "Uloma, this dress is for the princess. What if she finds out?" She begged quietly. "Please, I will remove it before we return. I just want to feel it." The palace guard hesitated for a long moment, but he knew Uloma. She was trustworthy. She never misbehaved. He finally nodded. Uloma's eyes shone with excitement. She wore the dress and immediately she felt transformed. She felt taller, confident, important. Even the guards looked at her differently as they walked out of the palace. When they arrived at the supermarket in the city, everything changed. The palace guards walked behind her with respect, just like they would do for a real princess. People in the supermarket stared at her as she pointed at the items they needed. The guards picked everything and dropped them inside the trolley. She paid with the palace card like a true princess would. Her heart felt warm. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged among royalty. But life is strange. The day you pretend to be something you are not may be the day someone important notices you. As they stepped out of the supermarket, an expensive car parked in front of them. The door opened and a tall, handsome young Nigerian man stepped out. His skin was smooth, his suit was sharp, and he carried himself like someone who had seen many countries. He walked straight to Uloma as if something was pulling him. "Hello," he said softly. Uloma turned and their eyes met. Her breath caught. "You look so beautiful," he said, his voice deep and calm. "There's something special about you. Please, I would like to see you again." Uloma froze. Her heart jumped. She wanted to speak, but her tongue refused to move. She knew this life was not hers. She was only wearing a dress. She was only pretending. But the young man stepped closer, gently holding her hand. "Please say something. Can I have your number?" Uloma looked at the palace guard. The guard looked away respectfully, pretending not to hear, standing the way a guard would stand beside a royal princess. Uloma's heart twisted. She wanted to feel loved. She wanted to feel valued. And this young man looked like someone from the life she had always dreamed of. She slowly gave him her number. As they drove back to the palace, Uloma sat quietly, her heart dancing, but her mind full of fear. That night, the young man called. He told her his name was Chibuzo. He told her he wanted to see her again. He loved her personality. He felt drawn to her. He wanted to know her better. Uloma wanted to tell him the truth. She wanted to confess that she was only a maid, that she wore the princess's dress because she wanted to feel important for a single day. But something inside her whispered, if you tell him the truth, he may never want to see you again. So she kept quiet. And that silence became her deepest problem. Chibuzo continued calling her. He sent messages, voice notes, and sweet words. He begged her to meet him again. She wanted to see him too, but she knew she could not appear before him as a maid. She needed the princess's clothes. She needed the royal look.
One afternoon, she sat in the palace garden, lost in thought. The sun was setting, the birds were chirping, and her heart was restless. This may be my only chance to be loved by someone rich, she said to herself. Maybe this is God answering my prayers. I love this man already, and I think he loves me too. She decided she would give it a try. She spoke to the palace guard again. Anytime they had errands, she would secretly take one of the princess's clothes along. After completing the errands, they would stop at her friend's house where she would change into the princess's dress. Then she would visit Chibuzo. The guards would wait in the car outside while she spent some time with him. Then she would tell him she needed to return to the palace because her father, the king, never allowed her to stay away too long. And slowly, the lie grew wings. Chibuzo fell completely in love with her, and she fell deeply in love with him too. She told herself she would confess soon, but each day passed, and she found it harder and harder to tell him the truth. Their relationship grew. Their laughter grew. Their love grew, and so did the lie. By the time Chibuzo knelt down and proposed to her, Uloma's world was already shaking. She knew she was in trouble. She knew she needed to tell him the truth, but the words would not come out. She loved him too much. She feared losing him even more. Meanwhile, she had no idea who Chibuzo truly was. No idea that he was the prince searching for a bride in secret. No idea he was the heir to the kingdom where she served as a maid. No idea her lie would soon explode in front of the king and queen. And no idea that her life was about to change in a way she never expected.
If love is a gentle fire, then Chibuzo's love for Uloma was already burning like the midday sun. He woke every morning thinking of her. He slept every night smiling to himself. He had met many women in his life, both in America and Nigeria, but none moved him the way this gentle, soft-spoken princess did. At least, that was who he believed she was. But while Uloma was drowning in her secret, Chibuzo was hiding his own truth too. He was not just a rich young man, he was a prince. the only son of the king of Odenigbo, the ruler of a flourishing Igbo land known for its riches, its culture, and its strict traditions. Chibuzo had left Nigeria years ago to study in America. He had told his parents he would return home when he was ready to marry. But years passed, and the king and queen began to worry. They wanted their son to marry well. They wanted a good princess for their people. They wanted a daughter-in-law who would continue the royal lineage. So they called Chibuzo one day and told him, "My son, come home. It is time." But Chibuzo was stubborn. He loved his parents, but he did not want anyone choosing a wife for him. In many families, parents could pick, but Chibuzo refused to follow that path. He wanted a woman whose heart spoke to his, not someone arranged through pressure or royal expectations. So, he made a plan. He returned quietly to Nigeria without telling his parents. He stayed in Enugu City, blending into the crowd like an ordinary rich young man. He handled some business, visited good places, met people, observed life, and searched for a woman who would touch his soul. Then one day, he went to the supermarket, and his destiny walked past him wearing a peach princess dress. Uloma. Soft smile, innocent eyes, humble voice, grace that came from within. He believed she was a real princess, and because of that, he treated her like a delicate treasure. Weeks passed. Their love became stronger. He proposed, she accepted, and he finally decided it was time to reveal himself to his family. But before calling them, he wanted to test the strength of their love. That night, he spoke to Uloma on the phone for a long time. "There is something important I need to tell you soon," he said. She paused. Her heart raced. The guilt inside her was growing into a heavy stone. "I also have something important you need to know," she replied gently. "What is it?" he asked. "No, not yet. I will tell you soon." Her voice shook. He noticed. He felt a knot in his chest, but he believed she might be shy or scared of the idea of becoming a wife. He had no idea the truth was much deeper. The next morning, Chibuzo finally called his parents. "Daddy, Mommy, I am returning home. I have found the woman I want to marry." The king and queen almost fainted from surprise. "You are where? You have found who? Where are you calling from? Are you coming alone? Who is the girl?" So many questions flew like arrows, but Chibuzo laughed. "I will tell you everything when I get home," he said. News spread through Odenigbo kingdom within 1 hour. The prince was coming home, finally. After so many years, the palace grounds became busy. Guards cleaned every corner. Maids rushed around carrying instructions. Food was prepared, decorations were placed, even drummers were rehearsing at the palace gate. Everyone was excited, except one person in Enuimu Kingdom who was about to face the biggest shock of her life. Oloma. She woke up early that morning, her heart filled with many thoughts. She loved Chibuzo deeply, but she felt she had already gone too far with the lie. She feared losing him. She feared disappointing him. She feared the shame of confessing she had never been a princess. But she reminded herself that Chibuzo had promised to love her forever, that surely he would understand. She told herself she would tell him the truth very soon, maybe when he returned from seeing his family. She had no idea she was heading into the biggest storm of her life. Meanwhile, in Odenigbo Kingdom, the king and queen prepared to send their guards to pick up the prince at the airport. But Chibuzo told them, "No need. I will find my way home." His parents were confused, but they obeyed. By noon, a convoy of smaller Talas cars waited behind the gate. Drummers stood in 2 rows, maids lined up wearing their finest uniforms. The princess of Odenigbo stood proudly behind her parents, smiling gently. She had not seen her brother in years. Everyone waited. And then, the sound of a car engine echoed through the palace courtyard.
Chibuzo entered the palace gates in his own car. The moment he stepped out, the palace erupted with noise. Drums beat loudly, people clapped, the air buzzed with excitement. The king and queen rushed to him and hugged him joyfully. "Welcome home, my son. Welcome back to us." But while the celebration warmed the air, something colder was happening among the maids. Among them stood Uloma, wearing her simple maid gown, standing behind the other maids respectfully, trying to see the new prince clearly. Then, their eyes met. His heart stopped, her legs weakened. "Uloma?" The king and queen stared in confusion. "Which Uloma?" the queen asked. "Our trusted maid," the king added. Chibuzo stepped forward, his eyes still locked on her. "She looks like the woman I proposed to." The moment he said that, the entire palace froze like cold harmattan water. The princess turned sharply to stare at Uloma. "Which princess did you propose to?" the queen asked slowly. Chibuzo pointed at Uloma's shaking hand. "Look at her finger. That is the ring I gave her." The king blinked. The queen gasped. Palace guards looked at one another. Uloma wanted to melt into the ground. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought everyone could hear it. "Come inside," the king finally said. "Let us hear the story." Inside the palace hall, the atmosphere was heavy. The queen's face was full of confusion. The princess's eyes were sharp with anger. Chibuzo looked hurt, confused, and betrayed without understanding why. Uloma stood trembling, her head bowed, her tears falling like rain. Chibuzo turned to his parents. "I lived in Enugu for almost a year. I wanted to find my wife myself. I did not want anyone to choose for me. I found someone I loved deeply. I proposed to her. I trusted her. I told you both I was coming home to introduce her to you." He pointed again at Uloma. "She is the one." The queen's voice rose slightly. "But she is a maid here. She is not a princess. She has never been outside Enu Imo." The shock on Chibuzo's face was painful to watch. "A maid? What do you mean she is a maid?" The princess snapped. "Could it be that she has been pretending to be what she is not?" The king's voice thundered. "Uloma?" Uloma fell to her knees, crying loudly. Her secret was no longer a secret. Everything was exposed, and she knew there was no hiding anymore. The king demanded, "Speak. Who are you? What have you been up to? Why did you deceive him?" Her voice was cracked and weak, but she forced herself to talk. "I am sorry, my king. I am sorry, my queen. I am only a maid. I only wanted to feel like a princess for one day. I wore the princess's dress just to feel important. That was the day he met me. I did not plan for it to go this far. I tried to tell him the truth. I was afraid to lose him. I fell in love with him. I did not know he was the prince of this kingdom." Chibuzo's face twisted with pain. "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let me believe a lie?" She cried harder. "The night before you returned home, I told you on the phone that there was something important you needed to know. That was exactly what I wanted to tell you." But everything had already gone too far. The king and queen were furious. They ordered that Uloma should be locked inside one of the palace rooms until they decided what to do with her. For days, the palace went cold. Maids whispered sadly.
Gods missed her kindness. Even the king and queen felt her absence, though they did not admit it. But one person felt the silence the most. Prince Chibuzo. Because he still loved her. Even in his anger. Even in his confusion. Even in his pain.
If pain could speak, then the walls of Odenigbo Palace would have cried loudly during those days. Everywhere felt like Harmattan morning, cold and heavy. Even the birds that usually perched on the palace roof to sing at dawn were strangely quiet. It was as if the entire kingdom was holding its breath, waiting for what would happen next. Inside one of the locked palace rooms, Uluoma sat on the floor, wrapped in her wrapper, eyes swollen from crying. She had always been the happiest maid in Enuimo. She laughed easily, worked harder than anyone, respected everyone, and never used her closeness to the royal family to oppress anyone. But now, she was the saddest soul in the kingdom. She kept remembering Chibuzo's face when he discovered the truth. The shock, the confusion, the betrayal, the pain. It was too much for her heart to bear. She whispered to herself constantly, I should have told him. I should have said the truth from the beginning. I should have confessed before everything got too deep. But regret always comes late. Outside the palace room, the rest of the kingdom was buzzing with rumors. Villagers gathered in small groups, discussing the strange drama. The prince had come home with a bride, but the bride turned out to be a maid, pretending to be a princess. Some people were angry, some were amused, but most people were worried. They knew Uluoma as a good girl. Even the elders of Odenigbo felt disturbed. Meanwhile, the king and queen were in their private chamber, talking, thinking, and arguing. The queen was angry, but her heart was troubled too. That girl is not a bad person, she said quietly to her husband. I have watched her since she came here. She walks like she was born to serve with joy. She has never disrespected anyone. She only made a foolish mistake. The king sighed deeply. I know, he said, but she deceived our son. And if we allow this type of behavior, what message will we send to others? The queen looked at her husband with soft eyes. But she fell in love with him, and he fell in love with her. Should we destroy two hearts because of one foolish decision? The king remained silent. Elsewhere in the palace, Prince Chibuzo was fighting his own battle. He had locked himself inside his room, refusing to see anyone, refusing to eat properly, refusing to talk much. He was angry. He was hurt, but he was also in love. His heart felt like he was being pulled in two different directions. One part reminded him that Uluoma lied to him. The other part reminded him of the gentle girl who listened to him, who prayed with him, who laughed with him, who held his hand with sincerity even though she wore borrowed garments. He remembered the way she always looked at him, like he was the only man in the world. He remembered how she prayed for him whenever he traveled. He remembered her soft voice, her innocent laughter. He had met many women, but none had touched him the way she did. After 3 days, Chibuzo could not endure the silence anymore. He stood up, walked through the palace corridors, past the guards, and stopped in front of the locked room where Uluoma was kept. Open the door, he commanded softly. The guards looked at one another. The prince's voice was calm but firm. They obeyed immediately. When the door opened, Uluoma slowly lifted her head. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. She had not seen him since the day of the truth. Her tears instantly flowed again. Chibuzo stepped inside and closed the door gently. For some moments, they both said nothing. Only the sound of Uluoma's quiet sobs filled the room. Finally,
Chibuzo spoke. Why didn't you tell me the truth? Uluoma wiped her tears with shaky fingers. I wanted to. I tried. I was afraid. I thought you would hate me. I thought you would walk away. And by the time I wanted to confess, I had already fallen too deep in love with you. Chibuzo sat down slowly beside her. Do you know how I felt when I saw you here, working as a maid in my father's palace? He asked quietly. She shook her head, crying harder. I felt like the ground disappeared under my feet. Everything I believed fell apart. I felt like you stabbed my heart with your silence. Uluoma covered her face.
I am sorry. I am so sorry. I never meant to deceive you. I didn't know you were a prince. I only wanted to feel important for one day. I only wanted to feel like the kind of person you would love. The moment she said those last words, something inside Chibuzo softened completely. He reached out and gently pulled her hands down from her face. Look at me, he said. She looked into his eyes with fear and pain. I did not fall in love with you because of your princess dress. I fell in love with you because of the way you speak to people, because of your kindness, because of your gentle spirit, because of your heart. He paused. Clothes do not make a princess. Heart does. She burst into tears again. He lifted her chin. But what you did was still wrong. You lied to me. She nodded quickly. I know, and I will never lie again. Not to you, not to anyone. Prince Chibuzo stood up. Come, he said. Let's go and face whatever judgment my parents have prepared. Her heart stopped. They walked together to the throne room. The guards were shocked. The maids whispered. The villagers who had gathered outside the palace rushed closer. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. When the king and queen saw them enter together, they exchanged a surprised look. Chibuzo bowed respectfully. Father, mother, I have come with Uloma. I have listened to her. I know she made a mistake, but her heart is clean. I still love her. I want to marry her. The princess gasped loudly. The elders looked at one another. The queen's eyes softened. The king leaned forward. You want to marry her, even after the lie? Chibuzo nodded without fear. Yes, because the lie does not define her. Her character does. The entire throne room went silent. Then the queen stood up slowly. My king, I beg you to consider love over anger. This girl is not evil. She only wanted to taste a life she believed she could never reach. And she is not the first young woman to dream of being a princess. The elders stepped forward too. Your Majesty, they said, this girl is good. Her only mistake was her dream. Let us judge her with mercy. The king looked around. He looked at Uloma. He looked at the prince. Finally, he spoke. Uloma, stand up. She stood, trembling. From today, let this be known. You did wrong, but your humility, your kindness, and your good name fight for you. You will not be punished. Instead, you will be forgiven. She fell to her knees in tears. And if the prince still wishes to take you as his wife, I will not stand against him. Prince Chibuzo smiled deeply for the first time in days. I still choose her. The queen came down from her seat, lifted Uloma up gently, hugged her, and wiped her tears. Welcome to the family, my daughter. The kingdom erupted with joy. Drums sounded again, songs filled the palace. Even the princess, after some moments of shock, joined in the celebration. The maids danced, the guards shouted happily, the villagers rejoiced. Within weeks, a grand traditional wedding was held. Uloma's story moved many people. The maid who dreamt of being a princess became one through truth, forgiveness, and love. Prince Chibuzo and Uloma lived happily together, and Uloma never lied again. She became known not as the Princess of Lies, but the Princess of Second Chances. Moral of the story: a good name is worth more than gold. Mistakes can be forgiven, but a pure heart will always fight for you.